You want some power? You want some short game? You want some iron control? You got it. Let's do this. Time for a transformational tip presented by Morgan Franklin. Listen, we all want to hit the driver longer. That's what we want to do. We want to gain some distance. How are we going to do it? Well, I got a tip for you here. I've also got an explanation that I know is going to help you improve your distance, get that ball a lot farther off the tee. So let's look at some of the things that we've got to do. First, we got to do a little reverse K. Second, I need a little backswing width. And third, I want to miss the noodle. What is that? All right, well, let's first go to the reverse K. So what do I mean about a reverse K? Well, when we get set up to hit a shot, so many times what happens to you is you're reaching for that forward ball position. And when you reach for that forward ball position, the shoulder line opens up and now your spine is actually tilted towards the target. The reverse K is when you take the line of the lead side and you create a straight line going up. And now, right here, from my trail hip to my trail shoulder, it's working away. And from my trail ankle to my trail hip is working away. So this is sort of a backwards K position right here. And when you do this right, what you're going to see is the shoulder line is going up in the air. So it's going that way instead of that way. Now, watch what happens when I get my shoulders in a wrong position and I get that setup position incorrect so I don't have the reverse K here. I'm going to show you a couple things. All right, now, pretty good shot there. Ball flights out a little bit lower, and I want you to pay attention to a couple of little different things. So come on up here and see what we have. First of all, we flighted this out really low. In fact, the apex was only 64 feet. The launch angle was about 12 degrees. Now, when I get that kind of lowness, what I get is I get a ball that's going to get to the ground early. That one flew about 230, and because it didn't have a lot of spin, that ball got out to 270. So, but if it's wet, that thing's going to be 230 to 245. It's not going to go very far because it's going to hit and splat. So the way we're going to be able to get this ball to get up in the air is get into that reverse K position. So watch what happens again when we do this. Tee that up. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of this number. What we're going to pay attention to here is we're going to pay attention to launch angle, apex, carry distance. All right, so set up like this. Now I get a little reverse K here. So we go reverse K, 149 I think I have on that ball speed. So here we go. All right, now a little bit of a miss hit there. But what I want you to see, come on up here, because this is really what happens. I know I hit that to the right. I get it. But watch this. My ball speed there was 149.6, so basically the same. My golf ball carried 250, so I got 20 yards of carry out of that shot. Now watch what happens. Apex, 102. Remember, we were at 64. So I lifted that apex up to 102. And my launch angle went to 15 degrees. So I was sitting there in that 11, 12 range. Now I got it to 15 degrees. Now what I got to do is I got to do a couple other things to get a little bit more distance on this. All right? So I want to talk to you about gaining a little bit of width. And what will happen when we get some width, because the whole thing that we're trying to do is we want to hit up on this ball. So we want this ball launching a little bit higher. When I get a little bit of width in the backswing, and what I mean by that is my arms and hands are going to be away from me. They're going to be back here and be in what we call a deep position. When I get this over here, now the club is going to be coming into the ground from the inside or into the ball from the inside. And that's going to make this a very shallow angle of approach. In fact, maybe even moving in an upward direction with the club head, which is also going to launch this up into the air. So I'm going to slip into a little bit of a reverse K. And then when I go here, I'm going to just feel like I'm getting just a little bit of push from my trail hand. So my trail hand is pushing back here to camera one. I'm just back like that. That's going to get my arms and hands away from me. So I'm going to get a wider swing and a shallower angle of approach. That should lift this up into the air and give me some additional distance. So here we go. Now, watch what happens to this apex here, because I want you to see the apex right down here. 129 in the apex. Launched that at about 13.5. So pretty good. All those numbers much higher. Now what we got to do is we got to do one final thing. And that one final thing is I want to feel like I'm hitting up on that ball. Now, how do we motivate ourselves to hit up on the ball? Well, we have to have some sort of avoidance, something to avoid. So, got to get ourselves the swim noodle here. And I got my swim noodle. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that noodle just in front. So we'll put it right up there. Now, tee this up. Now, in a down the line view here, Gibbsy, if I'm taking my golf club and it's coming into a downward approach right here, I'm going to hit that noodle there. When I've got the club coming into this and moving up, now you can see it's going to go above that swim noodle right there. Now, how far is the swim noodle in front of that driver? Well, let's start out with, we're going to get a grip and a half. So 1.5 grip, it'll be about like that. I put that down there. So I've got about a grip and a half in front. That's what the swim noodle is going to do. And that's going to allow me, when I'm swinging above this, to feel like I'm moving in an upward direction here. By the way, just so you know, that ball speed on that last one, remember I told you before I was 149. That one there was 152. So I gained some distance by getting that width, some ball speed. Now, we're going to miss that noodle. Now what you can see here is, again, I got that a little bit high in the crown. But what I want you to look at here is my launch angle and my apex. The apex is a little higher than I want because I got it high in the crown. But look at this, 150 feet up in the air. Now that's not ideal, but that's a lot higher. Launch angle, 18.6. Again, I got it high in the crown. Not ideal, but a lot higher. So now what we got to do is we got to put it all together. So, got to make sure I've got a ball that's going to register here. I'm going to take the swim noodle out, and I'm going to do these three things. And we'll see if we get a ball that goes a little bit farther, launches a little bit higher. My apex, I want that thing to apex somewhere around 100 to 120. That would be my max. 100 to 120 is where I want it to be. And I should be able to get a shot that gets out there in the maybe 275 to 280 range would be ideal for me. So reverse K, get some width, miss the noodle. Reverse K, get some width, miss the noodle. Now let's see what we get on this one. Don't hit that thing. Okay, good. All right, good. Now, let's look at what happened in these really important areas, right? We talked about getting this to get up into the air. Look at the ball speed now, went up to 156, because what I got when I did this, I'm kind of pushing back off of that, missing that noodle. That puts a little bit of speed into that club head. I'm starting to use the ground a little bit differently. Even though it's a simple thought like miss the noodle, I use the ground a little bit differently. And look at this, zoom in on that right there. I got 283, so 156, 283. We got to do this again. I got to get another one again. Let me get this tee. Oh, that was fun. Ball speed up to 156. So I went from 149 to 156. A little bit of width, a little bit of missing that noodle. I get to hitting up on this thing, and all of a sudden, everything goes exactly the way you want it to go. You start to get some distance on this. Here we go. This is my gamer right here. This one is peppered. Let's see what we got here. Come on up. This is really fun to watch this stuff. Now we'll look at all of our numbers, because this is where we're going now. We put it all together. First of all, we got a ball to get out to 280. That's what I was telling you before I was trying to get. I carried that 260, which is a lot farther than I was carrying it before. My ball speed's at 153, so it wasn't the 156, but it was higher than the 149. Now come down to this. Apex, 120. Remember I was telling you, I want that thing to be right in those numbers? 120 is the max. Look at my vertical launch, 17 degrees. I'm up from 11 degrees to 17 degrees. And that spin rate's pretty good, 2,200. I prefer that thing to be about 2,000. If that thing was at about 2,000, that ball probably goes out to about 285 or maybe even, no, don't say 300. I'm just kidding you. All right, so how do we gain some distance here? Pretty simple stuff. First, you start with pre-swing. I always tell you all the time, pre-swing, pre-swing, pre-swing. It's essential. What are the things that you can change that takes no athletic ability to improve your game? Setup position. Just going from this to this. That's going to change the angle that the club is coming in at. It's also going to change the angle that the ball is leaving the club at. And then we create a little bit of width here. That's going to make a little bit of a bigger arc, and it's also going to help shallow out this club. And then finally, we put that noodle about 1.5 grips in front of your golf ball, and all you're going to do is miss that noodle. And when you do that, what I'm telling you is you're going to gain some distance, you're going to gain some consistency, get rid of that low little, like, you know what it is, slice. We don't want any part of that thing. We're going to be able to get this ball up in the air and gain some distance. That right there is our transformational tip presented by Morgan Franklin. Time for a grip tip presented by Golf Pride. So many of us are trying to figure out the keys to a proper release. That term release is back at it again. So you know what? I want to help you understand what a proper release looks like and how it behaves. There's a couple of things that we have to pay attention to. One, face control. Why is face control important? Well, when we open up that club face in the backswing, now we have to shut the face in the downswing, and that changes our release point, which I'm going to get to in a second. Wrist activity. What does wrist activity have to do with our release? Well, every golf swing has wrist activity. Where does it happen and how does it happen? We want to talk to you about that. And then finally, what's a target side release? Well, let's first talk about what we initially referred to as face control. What are the things that are involved in face control? Well, face control, I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about this. This is the money maker. We always want to be paying attention to what the face is doing. Now, if I take the club back and I open up the club face in this fashion here, so at the top of the swing, my face is open, my club face is open. When I start to bring the club down now I start having to square the club, and I start trying to release to square the face. We want to release for power. That's what we want to try to do. So if I get in here, roll this face open, and then try to square the face, watch what happens to this golf ball. So I hit that a little bit fat. I tried hard to square the face, so I got to draw. I started the ball out to the right, and I got to draw. But my distance was really compromised. I only hit that ball about 150 yards in the air. How do we solve the position of the club face? Well, the way we do it is with a ball. What you're going to do is yellow, green, doesn't matter, but I need a ball that's got split colors. So I'm going to hold this ball in the palm of my lead hand. When I take this club back, what I want is I want this yellow ball to always face, the yellow side of the ball, to always face camera one. So when I go like this and I move this back, that's always facing camera one. And when I get to this point, I should be able to open up my hand and that ball is going to not fall out. It's going to stay there. If I take the club back or the ball back and I rotate my hand this way and then I let go or open up my palm, it's going to drop down. The second thing that's going to happen is that when I go to here, back to this, and I rotate, now we can see just half the yellow and we can see some green. So what we want to do is we want to get the feeling that that yellow part of the ball is always facing the target. And now I'm able to hold that ball. So now when I put this into the feel of a golf club and I take this back, now my palm is going up into the air right here at halfway back. And when I do that, what I then get is a different wrist angle because my wrists will then lever differently. So I go here, and now I go like this, and now my club face is in a square spot. So now if I do this and then do my trail side release, watch what this ball is going to do. Now what you can see is that's going to start over to the left-hand side and hook even more. So I started that ball. Look at this vertical launch over here. Come on up here, Gibbsy. My vertical launch there is 12.6. My apex is only 40 feet. spin rate on that is 1,600 to the left. All of that because of what's happening with a good club face that I'm now doing a trail side release on. Now, how do I get myself to feel this? Well, what we want to do is we want to bring in the hurdle. And I set the hurdle just like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my club shaft on top of this. Now, when I start to come down, what you can see is my wrist is doing this. It's not opening up. The angle between my lead forearm and the club shaft is getting wider in a trail side release, and we want it to get narrower to get a target side release. So I get in here like this, I get that feeling. And you're just sawing that bar in half. So now I take that, put this back here like that, and now we marry these two. So ball, and then I'm going to let that wrist kind of narrow into this. This is just going to be a punch, but I'm going to tell you it's going to go more than 145 yards in the air. So that was just a little punch. I didn't really swing hard at that at all. And guess what? Watch this. This is going to be amazing to the mind. That was a half a swing. I didn't even go at it hard. I got a little bit of leverage in the downswing, and I didn't have to close the face. So what did I get? I got a ball that flew 174 yards in the air, and that was like a punch shot. Ball speed went way up, apex way up. Look at the side spin. It's down to almost 300 RPMs to the left instead of being 1,600. All right, so now the final part of this is getting this target side release, because I don't want you to get here and drag it. I want this to release for some speed. So now what do? What does any smart person do when they're in trouble? Swing something that's other than a golf club. So what I mean by that is, what we're going to do is we're going to make this backswing. I let this rope get on my shoulder. Now I'm going to keep it on my shoulder and then let it get over there. And you can hear the whoosh happen way out here. So now I get a feeling of a target side release. Now I'm going to swing a club so I can get a feel of that club on a target side release. You can hear the noise. Now, remember that one there, the ball speed? 116. Carry distance? 174. Sun's out, guns out. Here we go. We're putting it all together. I'm going to do that little maneuver with the ball in the backswing right there. Just like that. Feel the wrist do this in the downswing. Target side release. Here we go. There's my shot. I got a little bit of spin. Come on up here now, because this is what's fun. This is how you gain power. This is how you gain consistency. Watch what happens. 198 yards I got on that. 190 in the air on the 6-iron. Pretty good. Not tour-like, but not bad. Now, let's follow some other things that we see. First, I got a lot of backspin. I got a lot of side spin, but it's right around 10%. Once I get to my spin ratio of being 10%, that's the relationship of backspin to side spin, I get a 10% thing. Now I got a soft little draw. And apex at about 83. I'm typically like 83 to 90 feet with the irons there. Launch angle, 15 degrees with the 6-iron. So what does that mean? What that means is that if you want to have a proper release, you want to have consistent distance, what you need to do first is get control of the club face. Once you understand that the open club face is going to make it impossible for you to release the energy for speed, you have to release for face. You've got to cover that first. That's the first out of the double play. And any baseball coach will tell you the most important out in a double play is the first out, the lead runner. Well, that in this game is getting control of that club face in the backswing. Use that ball to give you an idea of how the lead hand should move in the backswing. What that will do then is change the wrist angle, change the club face, which allows you now to lever the club in the downswing and then release on the target side of the body. When you start to do that, you're going to gain a lot of power, have a proper release, have a consistent low point to the swing, gain that distance. And that is a grip tip presented by Golf Pride. Time for Proving It, presented by Titleist. Oh yeah, the yellow ball is here. I know you've got it. I've got it. I'm playing it, and it is phenomenal. All right, so want to talk about two things that separate in the golf swing. In order for you to be consistent with your swing, you've got to think about the movement away from the shoulder, away from the chin, and the lead arm away from the chest. Now, why are these really important things? Well, they create speed. If this lead shoulder stays in the backswing, so what in effect happens in a backswing is your head does this. I know it sounds really funny, but this is what happens in the swing. Your head turns this way over your lead shoulder. Now, the way you do it is your head looks this way and you rotate your shoulders like this. But in effect, what you're doing is you're in camera one, you're just doing this. That's your backswing with what's going on with the head. Now, what we need to do is we need to get the shoulder to get away from the chin. When the shoulder gets back here and then we keep the shoulder and the chin together, all of a sudden we get into problems and the bottom of the arc happens. We lose speed. Bottom of the arc is happening too much before the ball. And we lose speed because now what happens is I don't get any rotational force in there. My chin stays on the shoulder and now all of a sudden all I can do is go laterally. So that will kind of look like this. Set up, make the swing, shoulder's going to stay here, and now I'm going to do this. I'm going to kind of glide into it, and what will happen is the club is going to work under the plane. I'm going to hit it fat and may even hit it thin if I push off the ground and try to get the club through. But the point is it decelerates the club speed, and we need to accelerate the club speed. And the way you're going to do that, one way, is to feel that the lead shoulder is getting off of that chin. So one of the things that you want to feel is once you get to the top, that lead shoulder is going to touch the chin. You get it off of the chin as soon as you can. Not as quickly, but as soon, early in the downswing. Here, get that off. And what will happen is that lead shoulder is going to go away from the chin. So we get that lead shoulder off of the chin. So here we go. And what you're going to find is that the club's going to start to get flung into the air. That one was a very simple one. Ball speed got up to 120 on that one. Very easy to do. Get that shoulder to touch the chin. Get the shoulder off of the chin. That'll create a lot of speed. Separate that lead shoulder from the chin. The other thing that we need to do to create a little bit of speed, create some consistency, is we want to get the lead arm off of the chest. Now, in the backswing, and we'll use a 1 here, the arm never gets to where it's completely touching the chest. But there's an angle between the lead arm and the shoulder line. This angle right in here. And what happens is that angle at address is probably 75 degrees. It comes into the backswing, and it may get to, say, 35 or so, depending upon the club and the individual, right? But we're back here in this fashion here. What we want to do is we start the downswing. It should narrow. In other words, it should, because the lead shoulder is moving, the arm should go back and this should narrow. And then what we want to do is we want to get that arm off of the chest. That's going to create a little bit of arm speed, and that arm speed is going to move the club head a bit faster. So get back here, get that feeling of that arm getting really close here. Body rotation. And then we're going to just rotate and spring the arm. So here, spring the arm. And again, though I got that a little bit thin, still a very good shot, very accurate, right at the target. Now what I want to do is I want to take both of these and I want to put them together. So again, we talk a little bit about it. Again, spring training is over. The season has started. By the way, Mets and Yankees are back at it. I know. Don't hate me because you don't like them. Here's the deal. We got to turn a double play. And the double play is this comes off of the chin. That's the first separation. And then this comes off of the chest. That's the next separation. We turn a double play. First out, second out. So when we turn those two, get that double play, we should get some speed in here. Shoulder's going to get off the chin. Arm gets off the chest. I worked a little bit under. I didn't quite get my shoulder to get off the chin the way that I wanted. However, let's look at what happened in the shot. A couple of really good things happened. One, apex went to 95, launch angle at 17.4. That's really, really good. But what also happens is ball speed gets up near to 123 for my 6-iron. That's excellent. I carry that about 190. It only rolls out to about 195. And that's in a fairway because that ball isn't hitting the green and stopping. So if you want to gain a little bit more distance, you want to gain a little bit of consistency with where the bottom of the arc is occurring, what we want to do is make sure that we have the separation of the lead shoulder off of the chin and the lead arm off of the chest. And when we start to do that, we're going to gain some speed. Let me just hit one more here so you can get an idea of this. Let's see if we can get this to top out over 123. Get a little bit of speed. Come on. Pretty good shot there. Turning back. Let's see what we got. Come on, we got it. Come on up here. Let's have a party. Look at that number right there. Givers, blow that up. 124, baby. 124. So we want to create a little bit of speed. We want to create a little bit of consistency. You got to get those separations. You got to separate that lead shoulder from the chin. You got to separate that lead arm from the chest. And when you do that, you'll be proving it. And it's presented by Titleist. Just working a little bit on my short game, trying to get better and more consistent with my chip. And oh yeah, that was a good one. So we got an email from Charlie and he said, Michael, please give me a little help with just straight chipping. I need to understand a little bit more on how to be more consistent with my chipping. So you know what? It's time for a FootJoy fix on how we can improve our chipping. And when we come over here, there's 3 things that I want you to pay attention to. The first one is in pre-swing. I want you to stand a little bit closer. I want you to think about getting your weight a little bit forward, and you might even have a little bit of a narrower stance. So let me go back over here and show you what I mean by this. When we start talking about being a little bit closer to the ball, so many times what I see you do in a camera 1 is we get so far away from this shot that when we come in here, we kind of hit it fat. We throw it up into the air. We create a toe hit. The ball starts to run and starts to release unpredictably. What I want you to feel is that you're right on top of this. And this is something that Raymond Floyd told me about was he said, Michael, when you're hitting these short shots, I want you to feel like you're standing right on top of this golf ball. And what you can see is I'm a little bit more consistent in my accuracy as far as straight left or right. And also my distance is pretty good. So we want to feel like we're getting in there. I also want you to feel like you're getting stable weight. And what I mean by that is, I'm not advocating that I want you to have 92% of your weight on your left leg. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you set 60% forward or 70% forward, that you keep that. I don't want to have the weight moving around because once we move the weight around, now all of a sudden we move the bottom of the arc all around and we also add loft. And so we don't have the ability to predict a launch angle, an apex, a spin rate, how far the ball is going to carry, how far is it going to roll. So I want you to feel like when you get in here, you're kind of just in this position and then the body is kind of just staying in the same spot. We get that shot. Look at this. Keep going. Keep going. Oh, almost got it. So we want to make sure that we're paying attention to those pre-swing fundamentals so we have consistency in the strike. The third thing that we need to pay attention to is this right here, what we call stable wrists. Now, what do we mean by stable wrists? Well, what we mean is I don't want this club to be flipping around. And so what I've done is I've taken a 9-iron and just put in a putter shaft in the head. And when I get set up to hit this shot, what you can see is if I get really flippy with this, I'm going to stab myself in the side. What we want to feel is the body is doing a little bit of work. In other words, the upper body. So my shoulders are moving just a little bit like this, and they're moving a little bit forward in an open position. And my wrists are really just kind of holding the club and going on for the ride. The momentum, and it's not that, but that's what you feel. The momentum is really the body. So we get in here like this, and then we hit that shot there. And Pretty good accuracy there. Try it again. When you're doing this, you're really concerning yourself with how you're moving this club through and making sure that you're not changing or altering your wrist position. Just a straight little chip shot. That was really good right there. Oh! Now we take this, put this back over here, and go through this again. So, I've got a feel of my shoulders working in here. I got to just let the hands follow. And what you'll see is when I hit that shot, my distance control is excellent right there. That golf ball rolled out to about 3 feet past the hole. So, when you want to start to get a little bit more consistency in your chipping, and that's what we're talking about. Charlie, you know the answer to this. We've got to get out there and practice. So many of you are struggling because you don't practice, and then when you do practice, you don't practice the same things. And the things I want you to practice, get a little bit closer, get a little bit narrow, get a little weight on that lead leg, and keep that weight consistent. And then I want you to feel like your wrists are stable. I don't want them supplying any energy. You don't need it. We're only flying that ball. I flew that ball 7 yards in the air. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of club head speed to move the ball 7 yards in the air. So I don't need the wrists to be active here. I want them to be stable. I want the power source to be coming from the shoulders and the upper body, and it's feeling like the arms and hands are just dragging the club head. And when you start to get that, you'll start to have consistency in your chipping, and that is a FootJoy fix.